Rectify the line. March!
Well, most meals have I'm not telling.
Freeze head! Arm! Sir, freeze one.
Attention, battalion.
Hail Columbia!
Right, shoulder shift. Hard. Shoulder. Hard. Arm. Hard. Shoulder. Hard. Support. Arm. Shoulder.
Being that it takes a bit of time to reload, you've got to plan your strategy carefully. We've got a Spencer carbine in the Union soldiers recommend for us. Watch his rate of fire. Given the opportunity, he's going to keep up a higher rate, doing what he can. It looks as though several of the Confederate soldiers have the older, outdated muzzle-loading carbines. Gotta watch their flank. If the enemy gets on your side, that is the worst thing that could happen. Difficult for you to fire back, no support from your comrades, and a round coming at you is devastating. Can not only take you out, but your friends as well. You want to keep the enemy to your front, never on your side.
Guys, we're bunching up.
Well, they're holding the line. They're holding.
Come this way.
So we have the artillery piece reloaded again. Rammers on the hubs. They're ready to fire.
Ready! Aim! Fire! Load!
The infantry. They're bringing it in open order. That's a fair good shot with a pistol. Indeed. Most of these lads don't have great training in their artistry. The problem is the tendency with a lot of soldiers not used to their weapons, the tendency is to aim very, very high. So you make your officers yell at their men to aim low. Because if your tendency is to aim high and you start aiming at the knees, that high shot is chest height. Because the tendency is to aim high, if you aim at the chest and you fire with that, you send the round directly over the top of the head. So you'll often hear the lads tell them, aim low. Aim low. The rounds hopefully will go again around chest height. So some of these lads might be well trained with their weapons. The weapon is well capable of hitting around a great distance. Battling distance generally ends up being about 200 yards. But the rifle itself, it can hit targets virtually 1,000 yards off. That has been done by some units. If you see Sharpshooter companies come out here, they're capable of doing it. There have been reports too of soldiers firing at a great distance of over a mile and seeing effect, meaning the legs will go that far. It comes a question of can the soldiers maneuver it. That round, when fired, leaves the barrel at about 800 to 1,000 feet per second. So fully capable of going the distance, it is again the question of can the soldier do so accurately. So at 500 yards, they may open up, but it's a great waste of powder. Most of those rounds will miss. 200 yards is the main battering distance. That's when you'll see regular firing. If the foe approaches within 100 yards, that's when you'll see the most effect. Because even an inaccurate soldier should be able to hit their opponent at 100 yards.
One, stand.
They're keeping them at a fair distance from there, though.
Loaded.
They're operating right on that portion of about 200 yards as best they possibly can, keeping as great of a distance between the two lines as possible. Again, their goal is not get an engagement, just to harass the enemy. And make
One's
them
advance.
see what's going on in their own line.
Hold.
These lines are firing. The wonderful substance known as black powder.
Fall back.
Black powder.
Fall back
consists
into
of three
line.
basic elements. First of all, a substance
Fire
known
at will.
as sulfur. Sulfur smells like rotten eggs, so if you get a good whiff of that and you smell rotten eggs in it, that'll be that sulfur. The purpose of the sulfur is to lower the ignition point of the powder, make it easier for it to ignite. Then that's at 10%. 15% is the charcoal that's added to it. As I understood it, hardwood is the preferred type of substance of charcoal, the same stuff you have in your fires. You get that, again, hardwood is the ideal. 15% of it is that. So 10% sulfur, 15% charcoal, 75% of it though.
All the way on this end.
A chemical element known as potassium
Face that
nitrate.
direction.
Potassium nitrate is also referred to as saltpeter. Saltpeter is most of what they're firing. That makes up about 75% of black powder. So what is that exactly? Well, for the southerners, most of these lads are getting their potassium nitrate, their saltpeter, from the hen houses all through the south. It's a great source of
Company, halt.
But for a Confederate soldier, he will take everything but the powder.
Engage!
Confederate soldier, except the powder. The primary reason is the southern powder, it burns well and almost always goes up. Highly corrosive though. But for Union soldiers, they're having issues with government contractors supplying them the powder. And in many cases, the contractors will put in black sand into the barrels of gunpowder. Looks all the same, feels all the same. You got enough actual black powder, it would seem to burn the same until you actually go to load it. And your first shot might work fine, second shot maybe a bit weaker.
Up with the cab, we will volley. Move forward. Die glory.
So for the Union soldiers, they will try to get Confederate powder if they can. But you always want your weapon to fire every time you squeeze that trigger.
Company, halt.
So aside from the powder and lead
Engage the
placed on the
cab.
barrel, at the back of the weapon they then put what's called a percussion cap. It looks like a sunlight, a metal top hat of sorts that contains a filament of mercury. Very, very unstable, and it detonates on impact. So when the soldier fires, the hammer smashes down on that percussion cap, igniting it, and thus shooting a red hot into the powder. Cavalry soldiers are still keeping them at a distance, keeping them away from the guns. The Confederates seem to have supplied in their infantry though, so the horse soldiers will not be able to hold for long.
This side of Virginia.
And again, right now they're about 500 yards apart or so.
Slow
So they're
left
within
wheel.
range. You might see a casualty or two, but for the most part, the rounds are going to either go in the dirt in front of them or over the heads, as they are not again trained for that distance of fire.
15.
Left wheel, march.
Forward.
Oh, but I do stand corrected in the front of the Union line there. If I'm not mistaken, I see soldiers in green.
Back to half step. March.
Yes, indeed, those green soldiers. That's an elite group of sharpshooters. Commanded by Baron Berdan. The Berdan sharpshooters. I believe that's the 2nd US flag. And those lads can shoot. They have been well trained.
Left
In
wheel,
order
march.
to wear that
Go
green
back.
uniform, you have to be able to put
More,
rounds on a
Company in the line.
circle at 500 yards. So at this range, this is the sweet spot for those lads. You're going to see some hits from them. For the mainline infantry, most of them are just burning powder. Not going to have much effect at this distance.
Forward, march. Line up on Alabama.
Loaded.
Well, we're going to have influence fire here in just a moment. Better to pass the Union line.
Forward.
Fire
Again,
away!
a close distance apart. But they must turn and wheel. And this is all the sharpshooters though are refusing to play, keeping them from getting on the side of the infantry line. Each group of cavalry soldiers are doing what they can to keep the foe at bay.
Understand! Forward march! Line up to Alabama! Go, come with.
The infantry get lucky. They are going to try to take out the horses. It's very easy to get a man in the saddle. Much harder to get a piece of horse flesh that's able to maneuver out on the field. That shot came from one of the camp soldiers in the Virginian line. Like as not, he's aiming at the soldier. He wants to get that horse nose out. You figure as deadly it is for the soldiers, it is by far deadlier actually for the horses. For about every soldier that goes down, there's about 2 horses, or horses and mules, what have you, that have also gone down. Is making use of the rapid-fire weapons. The infantry without being loaded.
Shut up! That's embarrassing! Keep your mouth shut, boy!
Got the artillery loaded up again. They're trying to draw the distance. And the artillery, they've got a whole selection of rounds they can fire based on what they're shooting at. They're shooting at solid objects, they're going to go for a solid cannonball, something like that. Not about ready to fire. They'll go for solid shots. Big heavy cannonballs cut through walls and ships and things of that nature. But against softer targets, they have got a whole selection of pieces. They can fire solid shots, but it doesn't do as much. They're probably going to fire something more like a spherical case, a case shot, which is a cannonball, big heavy cannonball, but it is hollow on the inside, and it has a timed fuse. Their goal is to try to calculate the distance of how many seconds flight it is from their gun to the enemy line. And again, those cannons will fire at about just over 1,000 feet per second. So they calculate the range, set the time accordingly. The goal is to have that shell blow up right in front, or right behind, or ideally right in between the line. Devastating from that. The spherical case was invented by an Englishman by the name of Henry Shrapnel. In fact, the boys have taken and culling the pieces of cannonball fragments from that after the invention, calling them pieces of shrapnel. Now, if they get close enough still, they might go to something known as canister. Both sides trying to stay again out of that 100-yard distance, because if they get within that 100 yards, it's going to be lethal. They're trying to keep their distance operating at 150 to 200 yards out. Hopefully that the enemy is not as accurate, or at least as accurate as you are. So most of the rounds will miss. So keep on that distance though. It's surprising that Alabama's not hurrying in. the skirmishers are going to have an effect upon them. This is the sweet spot, as it were, for the Berdan sharpshooters. They can hit these lads all day long. And with sharp rifles as well. They don't want those rifles to fall in the hands of their opponent. So they've been taking the rifles from the dead all the way back. Get within about 500 yards of the guns, the cannons will switch to something known as canister, which is basically a can loaded up with hundreds of rifle balls. Basically, imagine it as a shotgun, but with a bore of several inches across. It will be devastating for them if they get that close. Does seem the Union line has been broken. Sharpshooters are holding off an entire infantry company. They're keeping them back. They got within range of canister. Again, you hit that about 500, 400 yards, somewhere in that canister can be devastating for them. And they hit within that mark of that gun. I don't even know if they knew that was coming. And now they've got sharpshooters picking them off on the flank as well. Bringing them back. They're bringing the line back. The better line. They're holding, though. They're holding with good order. They want to keep their line relatively close and straight. That way their own artillery can support them. They were simply going to break ranks and run. You can't stop the foe, you can't give orders, and even your own artillery cannot support you. They've got to keep their order in together. Sharpshooters are deploying in open order, making them a smaller target, since those lads, their job is again, harass the enemy and take out as many as they can. And even at this great distance between the two lines, not a problem for them at all. Again, they're at, what do you suppose, sir, about 200, perhaps 300 feet between the two lines, or yards rather, between the two lines here? Wouldn't you say that's about right? And that's a sweet spot for those sharpshooters. They're making themselves as small as possible. Now the uniform of the Berdans, modeled after light infantry rifle companies, and being that it is that nice colour green, sort of even is handy as a form of camouflage, as it were. Makes them so they're even that much harder to see. Sharpshooters are withdrawn. Does seem the Union Army has fallen back to preserve their ranks. In this case, the Union Army typically begins battles with more soldiers than their southern brethren. But yet, the Confederacy commits their men almost as an act of desperation. So for a Confederate soldier, you're not likely to be held off in reserve. If there's a fight, you're going to be in it. But if there's a fight, a Confederate soldier is again more likely to outnumber a Union soldier on the actual line of combat. The difference is there's several regiments of Union soldiers held off in reserve, and I believe this is the entire Confederate Army committed here. Well, they're approaching the cannons again. We'll see what that artillery piece chooses to load. Again, they're deploying sharpshooters to protect the guns. I don't know as that'll work. As yes, they're very accurate. Their abilities there, but can they hold the line? Oh, the infantry decided to fall back. They're not going to try to get closer to that cannon. As scary as sharpshooters are, that gun is even more scary. They don't want to get up within canister range once again. Looks as though they have a group of Irish immigrants coming up on the Confederate infantry line at the far distance from us. They look to be the Jasper Greens. Observe most of the Union line loading in the standard way as the Confederates did, but note on the far end of the line, the right hand side as we're looking at, the left of the Union line, the Sharps rifles rather, notice how they are breechloaders, they're loading from the back of the gun entirely. Yes. Still the same basic elements of powder to load and the priming of that percussion pump.
Does your baby have a name?
On the rear right. Off dog. Stay. Ready. And fire.